another move in the FBI and the Russia narrative, and everything's gone on. So why don't you just give it to us straight?
Well, what we're learning more and more is that the FBI did a lot of nothing for quite a long time, unless that was going after President Trump. That seemed to be their MO for quite a while. But this is now information coming out of documents that was transmitted from Kash Patel to Congress in their oversight role, much like the Adam Schiff documents that we saw yesterday, those 302s. This is where we're now seeing more about this pipeline to the media that James Comey had. We knew that he said he leaked a handwritten memo to his friend, that's Daniel Richmond, who's
with the intent to leak it.
Right, to get it out there so that he could get a special counsel. That was actually his final salvo when it came to leaking. What we're finding out now is that the FBI was conducting investigations into leaked classified material to various outlets, the Washington Post, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, etc., and that they even interviewed this individual, the law professor, Daniel Richmond, and it turns out that he was, according to the reports and to the FBI's documents, Richmond told the FBI his goal was to correct stories critical of Comey, the FBI, and to shape future press coverage. He was interviewed as a part of a classified document leak investigation, and he was asked by the FBI in this investigation called Arctic Haze whether or not he leaked classified information or even confirmed classified information to the New York Times, specifically Michael Schmidt, who is the reporter that was on many of these stories, who Daniel Richmond had about a decade-long relationship with as being a source. He said, "I don't think I did, but with a discount." Effectively meaning, I can't tell you for certain if the things I confirmed or didn't confirm were, in fact, classified. He wasn't denying that he had this source relationship with Michael Schmidt. In fact, he even said that the whole goal of him being brought in by Comey as a special government employee, so he was getting paid by the FBI for this role where he could have SCI clearance, top secret clearance, be able to have these conversations with Comey. And many of the article timelines, it would be he went to a meeting with James Comey to discuss things that were classified. And then he had a meeting with Michael Schmidt, and a few days later, these stories came out. And yet he's saying, I can't be certain if I'm the one who gave the classified. All that to say that his whole purpose of this role with his friend James Comey was to, quote, correct stories critical of Comey. So defending his friend, the FBI, defending the Bureau, and to shape future press coverage. This is all outside of the actual press arm of the FBI.
Yeah, this is internal.
They have that.
Right, exactly. They have a PR firm that's running, or PR department.
Exactly, the press office.
But that's not what they're using here. They're utilizing their own... it's really chaotic when you look at it. You look at what they've tried to do. And again, all it really is confirmation of what we kind of knew. But when you see it kind of in black and white, it changes the way you feel about it. Because there's an assumption, and then there's fact. And when those assumptions and fact come that close together to the point where you're like, it can't be that bad. And it is. It's just,
But Logan, here's what makes this so crazy to me.
Yep.
Arctic Haze was opened, the investigation, in August 2017. They closed it in September of 2021, so 4 years later, with no one charged. They exhausted all their resources. Couldn't figure out who leaked these, even though they had the guy basically saying, I can't confirm or deny, I don't know. When they assumed or suspected that President Trump, the former president of the United States, took documents not for dissemination, but just to have from the White House, they put the full force of the Department of Justice. They got a special counsel. The FBI raided Mar-a-Lago. They took his passports. They took phones. They took everything. They released photographs of a former president of the United States for just retaining what they thought were not documents he should have. This is an FBI director who does not have the authority to declassify. That's from the president. Not only was he mishandling classified information, but the allegation here is that he was leaking it on purpose for people to know about it. Disseminating classified information. It's a violation of the Espionage Act. That has a 10-year statute of limitations. So James Comey's not out of the water already on this because there was intent to get this out there. But the fact that the FBI for 4 years, and it was closed down under Attorney General Merrick Garland in September of 2021, was unable to get to the bottom of this when they will raid Mar-a-Lago with the FBI. It is so absurd. The dual standard of justice here is disgusting.
Yeah, you got to set priorities, Will, and the priorities were not to find out who these leakers were. Was not to find out, but it was, it was involved with how, like you said, how can we get to Mar-a-Lago? How can we disrupt, I don't know, the election? They call for a lot of election interference, but of course, when it's clear and it's in black and white, then of course, no. Well, I mean, it was on our side, so of course it's got to be good.
Well, and of course, at the end of the day as well, we talked about this grand conspiracy. When they used that term initially, when Tulsi Gabbard, and there was reports that even the DOJ was looking into a grand conspiracy over the Russiagate stuff, that term almost was like, I mean, that sounds so grandiose. It sounds grand, the fact that they would call it a grand conspiracy. But then when you start to see even the own documents that still existed, but they had to uncover them, many of them were in burn bags, as we talked about, the fact that they were able to find the documents that shows how little they did to people like James Comey, when the allegation here is disseminating classified information for the purpose of protecting himself. And yet, what they did against President Trump before he was elected, while he was in office, and then after he was out of office, it just is so shocking. Yep. There is nothing else but to call it a grand conspiracy against the president and his voters. Yep. So let's go to Larry from Mississippi on line 4.
Does anybody really believe that no matter what goes on here, that Congress or the Senate are going to do anything really to put anybody in jail? Because the minute they do that, then all the dirty laundry from both houses and all over the government would be exposed.
Yeah, I think here's the difference. This is not the House or the Senate doing this.
Right.
This is DOJ led by Pam Bondi and the FBI led by Kash Patel. So very different investigators in charge of this who are much more bold, who are not part of the Washington swamp, and I don't think would be impacted that way. So if charges should be brought, and they believe that at the end of the day, after we now know those investigations have been opened, I think those charges will be brought. Now, again, we know there's a grand jury in Washington, D.C. We don't know a lot more than that. We know that those grand juries, usually if you were a Republican, it'd be pretty easy to indict a Republican. More difficult when you're talking about those on the left. But yes, you've got all of this still new information coming out from these individuals. And we learned about Schiff, and he's a whistleblower, and his staff saying, right, feeling uncomfortable about leaking classified information. The joke is you raid Mar-a-Lago over pieces of paper in boxes. But Adam Schiff has his own staff coming to the FBI and the DOJ saying they're telling us to leak classified information, and they're getting elected to the U.S. Senate.